Good morning. Today I want to spend a little bit of time reviewing solving linear equations. I'm going to look at just a couple of examples and send you off on your own and see what you can do with them. A lot of it you should have seen in Algebra 1. A lot of it goes back to your order of operations. So if we look at example 1 here, we have 3x plus 4 times the quantity x minus 1 and quantity equals 5x minus the quantity of 3x minus 1 and quantity. So here we should remember that we're going to go inside any parentheses and simplify them as much as we can first. Well, notice we can't do anything with x minus 1 or 3x minus 1. The next step would be then to distribute into those quantities. So we're going to take this positive 4 and we're going to multiply it to the x minus 1. We know it's a positive 4 because of the sign before it. On the right side of our equation, we're going to distribute this negative through. Some of you may have put a 1 on the outside of that parenthesis, so we're going to distribute a negative 1. Again, we know it's negative because of the sign that's in front of that number. So if I distribute those, I'm going to end up with 3x plus 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times negative 1 gives me a negative 4. Equals, on the right side we have 5x, multiply your negative 1 through. We have a negative 3x. Negative times a negative gives us a positive 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean up each side by combining like terms. So we have 3x plus 4x gives us 7x. I cannot add that negative 4 in with the 7x because it does not have an x with it. Remember, they have to have the same variables in order to be able to combine them together. 5x minus 3x gives us 2x, and then plus our 1. Again, the 1 cannot go with the 2x because they're not like terms. Now I want to concentrate on getting my variables to one side. And we can take them to the left side or the right side. It doesn't really matter. What we have to remember though is if we do something to one side of an equation, we got to do it to the other. So if I want to move and get rid of these 7x's, I can subtract 7x from it. And if I subtract 7x from the left side, I'd also do it from the right side. But notice subtracting a 7x over here, 2 minus 7, gives us a negative 5. Kind of ugly to work with negatives this early. So what I would suggest that we do instead is subtract 2x from both sides. So if I subtract 2x from both sides of my equation, 7x minus 2x combining like terms again gives me 5x. My minus 4 drops down, equals my 2x minus 2x. That's going to cancel each other out, and we're left with a positive 1 on the right side. Now I can go ahead and add 4 to both sides of my equation. That's going to get my constants together, so I have my variables on one side, my constants on the other. So now I have 5x equals 5. If 5x equals 5, then we know that x has to equal 1. Divide by 5 to both sides. Notice how my equal sign stays pretty close to being the same point, so my left side is always equal to my right side. Something you may want to consider as you're doing the problems. In example 2, we're going to get a little more complicated, but again, it's going to be very similar. We're going to see a negative 3 being distributed into this quantity, a negative 2 being distributed to the second quantity there. Now notice on the right side here we have 5x minus 1, the quantity, times the quantity of negative 2. So again, this is just a distribution property. It's going to be kind of a backwards distribution. So we're going to multiply the monomial, the single term, into this term that has two terms, or a binomial. So we'll multiply the negative 3 in, we get negative 3x. Negative 3 times positive 1 gives us negative 3. Negative 2 times x gives us a negative 2x. And negative 2 times a negative 1 gives us a positive 1. On the right side, we can multiply negative 2 in, so we get negative 10x plus 2. Negative 2 times negative 1 gives us positive 2. I'm going to go ahead and clean up on the left side here. Negative 3x minus 2x, combine like terms. Negative 3 minus 2 gives us negative 5x. Negative 3 plus 1 gives us a negative 2. And that's going to equal negative 10x plus 2. Nothing we can simplify or combine on the right side there. Now I want to go ahead and move my variables, so I have all my variables on one side. Again, I could add 5x to both sides, or I could add 10x to both sides. Noticing if I add 10x to both sides, I would end up with a positive 5x on the left side instead of a negative on the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and add 10x to both sides of my equation. So we have 5x minus 2 is going to equal, these are going to cancel, a positive 2. Now I can go ahead and add 2 to both sides. Combining like terms, I have 5x, my negative 2 and 2, they're going to cancel each other out, and that's going to equal 4. I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides, so I'll end up with x equals 4/5. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it as a fraction. It doesn't bother me if we have fractions or decimals. My rule of thumb is that if we start with fractions, we end in fractions. If we start in decimals, we end in decimals. If we start with whole numbers, we can end however we want. In example 3, another similar problem, but we're going to throw in some brackets. Brackets are just fancy parentheses. So you could remove those brackets and make parentheses out of them. It just gets a little more complicated as we have parentheses inside. Once we remove the parentheses inside, I like to change those brackets to parentheses. So inside those fancy parentheses or brackets, we see that we're going to multiply a negative into that middle quantity. So we have 2x minus 3 plus 2x plus 1. I'm going to end my bracket, and that's going to equal, on the right side, I'm going to multiply my 3 through. So I have 2. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and change that bracket to a parenthesis because we're getting rid of it. And we'll end up with a 3x plus 3. Again, I could have changed these brackets to parentheses as well, since we don't have any parentheses in there. Now it becomes a problem that we just saw before. So we're going to go in here, we're going to clean up inside the parentheses. So we have 2x plus 2x gives us 4x. Negative 3 plus 1 gives us negative 2. On the right side, I can go ahead and distribute that 2 through. So we have 6x plus 6. Multiply my 3 through. I have 12x minus 6 is going to equal 6x plus 6. Again, I'm going to move from the right side to the left side only because if I subtract 6x, I get a positive number over here. If I were to subtract 12x, I would end up with a negative value there. So I'm going to subtract my 6x. I end up with a 6x minus 6 is going to equal 6. Okay, my x's there cancel each other. I'm going to add 6 to both sides, so 6x equals 12. Divide by 6, so x equals 2. Some steps you're going to be able to skip, but I want to be able to see a lot of your steps so I can see what you're doing within the problems. And the last one, example 4, just a little nastier. We have some fractions to work with. Doesn't matter to me how you want to work with your fractions. Just don't change them to decimals necessarily. If you change them to decimals, you may have to round, and it becomes a little more complicated, and you don't get an exact answer at the end. So what can we do to eliminate some of our fractions? Well, if we read this, it's 1/2 times this quantity. And on the right side, we have 3/4 times this quantity. So I can arbitrarily pick a number to multiply both sides by that could help me. So if I were to multiply this side by 2, I know that 2 times 1/2 gives me 1. That would cancel that out. Remember, if I do something to one side, I do it to the other. If I multiply this side by 2, 2 times 3/4 gives me 3/2. Gets rid of one fraction over here, but I still keep the fraction here. Is there a number that I can multiply both 3/4 and 1/2 by to eliminate both fractions at the same time? That answer is 4. So if I multiply both sides by 4, so now I can read this as 4 times 1/2 times all of this. I can multiply my 4 to my 1/2 and I end up with 2. So I have 2 times the quantity 3x minus 1/4 times x plus 2 equals, on the right side I have 4 times 3/4 times x minus 1. So I can multiply by 4 times 3/4. I end up with 3 times x minus 1. Now some of you may be asking, why don't I multiply the 4 to the x minus 1? Well, to that I would ask the question, if I have 2 times 3 times 4, do we know what that answer is? Hopefully you would say 24. 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24. Notice we didn't take the 2 times the 3 and the 2 times the 4 and then multiply those answers together. We took 2 times 3, got our answer, multiplied it by 4. We're doing the same thing here. We're multiplying 4 to 3/4, getting our answer, and then multiplying it to x minus 1. Same thing over here. 4 times 1/2, get that answer, times this answer here. Now, what we can do is clean this up a little bit more. So we have 2 times the quantity, 3x. We're going to multiply the 1/4 through. So we get minus 1/4 x. 1/4 times 2 gives us 1/2. And on the right side, we have 3x minus 3 when we distribute that 3 in. We can distribute the 2 through here. So we have 6x minus 2 times 1/4 gives us 1/2 x. Minus 2 times 1/2 gives us 1. And that's going to equal 3x minus 3. We could take 6x minus 1/2 x. Again, we get 5.5 x's. Or we can clear that fraction as well. So what can I multiply each of my terms? Now notice that we have 6x, we have negative 1/2, we have negative 1, we have 3x, and we have 3. These are all individual terms. So what can I multiply those by to eliminate that fraction? And that answer would be multiplying it by 2. So I multiply this side by 2, I multiply this side by 2. This time now I have to multiply the 2 to each of those terms. Same on this side. Notice the difference. Here we have things being added or subtracted from each other. Here we are multiplying things together. Even though inside this big thing there was addition and subtraction, we're really multiplying this term to this term to this big term. Here you gotta multiply the 2 by each of those terms as well. So we get 12x minus 1x minus 2, and that's gonna equal 6x minus 6. Adding like terms, we get 11x minus 2 equals 6x minus 6. I'm going to subtract my 6x over. So I get 5x minus 2 is going to equal a negative 6. Add 2 over. So 5x is going to equal a negative 4. Divide by 5, so x is going to equal negative 4/5. With this problem, we do want to have it left in fractional form because we started with fractions. Again, if you start with fractions, you end with fractions. You start with decimals, you end with decimals. If you start with whole numbers, you can end with fractions or decimals. Enjoy solving those equations.